Morning all. Glad I made a video last night to post this first one this morning because I ended up not feeling very well last night. So it took me a little while to get out of bed this morning, which is fine. I get up and I put this board together this morning. The Ottawa Senators, their career as a franchise spans from 1992 through to now. I'm not talking about the Ottawa Senators that existed back in the 1920s and 30s, even though they won some Stanley Cups, because that's a completely different franchise, and there's about 60 years in between organizations. So I feel pretty good in saying they're not quite the same thing, just have the same name. Their all-time leading point scorer is Daniel Alfredsson with 426 goals, 682 assists, 1,108 points. Jason Spezza next up at 251 goals, 436 assists, 687 points. Erik Karlsson, 126 goals, 392 assists, 518 points. Alexei Yashin, 218 goals, 273 assists, 491 points. Wade Redden, 101 goals, 309 assists, 410 points for him. Radek Bonk, one of the greatest names in hockey history, really, truly. 152 goals, 247 assists, 399 points. Marian Hossa, 188 goals, 202 assists, 390 points. Danny Heatley, 180 goals, 182 assists, 362 points. Mike Fisher, 167 goals, 181 assists, 348 points. And Mark Stone, 123 goals, 188 assists, 311 points. And you know what stood out to me when I was writing down all these names is how many of these guys got traded as a surprise to everybody, or it was a trade that was panned afterwards, or they left under bad circumstances. There's a lot of that goes on with Ottawa. Kind of surprising, to be honest. Wins leaders, Craig Anderson, far and away, 191. Patrick Lalime, 146. Ron Tugnut, 72. Ray Emery, 71. Damian Rhodes with 65. Coaching wins, Jacques Martin, 341. He has quite a while before he has anything to worry about. Paul McLean, 114. Brian Murray, 107. Corey Clouston, 95. And Guy Boucher with 94. And of course, Guy Boucher got fired before he could pass Clouston. Not saying that Corey had anything to do with it, but where was he the day that Guy Boucher got fired, and how much money did he give Pierre Dorion to fire him? I'm kidding. Playoffs, they've been in the playoffs 16 out of 26 seasons, which is remarkable because from 93 to 96, this team didn't look like it was ever going to make the playoffs. This was the most absolute disastrous team of the expansion teams of the 90s at their beginning. And yet once they got good, they got pretty darn good. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2007. They went to the Conference Finals in 2003-2017. Now, the interesting thing about 2017 is the following. They missed the playoffs in 2014, 2016, 2018. There was a pattern. You make the playoffs every other year. They broke the pattern this past season by missing the playoffs again in 2019. So, pattern's broken. We don't know where things are going to go from here, but it's going to be interesting. Captain's list is surprisingly short for a franchise that hasn't had a whole lot of wins and has been through its share of struggles lately. 92-93, their first year, Laurie Boschman was their captain. Loved Laurie Boschman. It was part of the reason that I accepted the Senators as a team I would cheer for their first year. It was tough because they only had 10 wins that year. It was tough. And they won their first game of the year against Montreal, which was just an emotional win, and it looked great. And then 93-94, they had three captains, Brad Shaw, Gord Dineen, and Mark Lamb. It's not Brad Shaw, it's Brad Shaw. So there you go. 94-95, Randy Cunneyworth was captain. From 98 to 99, it was Alexei Yashin. 99 through 2013, Daniel Alfredsson had the captaincy. 2013-2014, it was Jason Spezza, and from 2014 to 2018, it was Erik Karlsson. They did not have a captain this past season. When they name one, it's going to be interesting to see who they pick. Do they pick a veteran who's been around for a bit and maybe a grizzled vet like a Borowiecki, or do they roll the dice and go with a guy like Brady Tkachuk and say, all right, it's your team going forward? Who will they go with? That's going to be an interesting one. Top 10 draft picks. The list's not as long as you might expect for Ottawa. For a team that's the butt of the joke in the league right now and has been the butt of the joke previously in between, pretty decent in terms of staying out of that bottom 10 spots. Number 2 in 1992 was Alexei Yashin. That was their first draft pick. 1993, they draft Alexander Daigle. And Alexander Daig's complete and total failure to become that big superstar that he was supposed to be before he was drafted was a big part of the reason this team struggled for as long as they did. 1994, they draft third. They draft Radek Bonk. 1995, they draft first. Brian Berard. 1996, they draft first again. They get Chris Phillips. So 3 years out of 4, they draft first overall. Miserably bad team. Then in 2001, they draft second. They get Jason Spezza. 2005, they draft ninth. They get Brian Lee. 2009, they draft ninth again. They get Jared Cowan. Frustrating player at the NHL level. He was supposed to be pretty good. 2011, drafting sixth. They get Mika Zibanejad. 2018, drafting fourth. They get Brady Tkachuk. And of course, this year they would have drafted fourth, but, and we'll get to that when we talk about trades, because trades really define the Ottawa Senators. And the interesting thing is, I didn't use like small trades here. I didn't use trades that didn't have any impact. I only used the trades that were impact trades. And I thought early on, I'm going to have a hard time filling up the board with the Ottawa trades. But when they make trades, they trade a lot of players. So it's not just one for one usually with these guys. Usually it's, okay, we got these 5 guys, pick 3. And we'll pick 3 from your pile. It's crazy. It's insane. So we'll get to it. December 19th, 1992. So this is during the absolutely awful season. Ottawa gets Bob Kudelski and Sean McCosh. LA gets Mark Fortier and Jim Thompson. So, looks like a minor deal, but Bob Kudelski's going to be a 40-goal scorer. It's going to happen. June 20th, 1993, Ottawa gets Craig Billington, Troy Millette, and a 1993 fourth. A New Jersey Devils team is very happy to get Peter Sidorkiewicz. 1994 fifth, which becomes Nils Ekman, and the rights to Mike Peluso are later transferred over. Sidorkiewicz was interesting. So he goes to Ottawa as the prized goaltender coming out of Hartford. The idea being this guy's looked great in Hartford for a crappy team. He's used to playing behind crappy teams. He'll be fine in Ottawa. And he was shell-shocked. So New Jersey in this deal was likely thinking, all right, we're upgrading our backup position a little bit. But in reality, Billington was a better goaltender than was Sidorkiewicz. And I don't know if that time in Ottawa hurt Sidorkiewicz, but he wasn't quite the same after that. January 6, 1994, Ottawa gets Evgeny Davidov, Scott Levens, a 1994 sixth, a 1995 fourth, and Florida gets the 40-goal scorer Bob Kudelski. So Kudelski in, Kudelski out. April 7th, 1995, Ottawa gets Martin Straka. Pittsburgh gets Norm McIver and Troy Murray. Just noteworthy because Straka will be used later. Not much later either. January 23rd, 1996, Ottawa gets Wade Redden and Damian Rhodes. The Islanders get Don Beaupre, Brian Berard, and Martin Straka. So Berard, not signing, not playing with Ottawa. So they trade him. They get back Wade Redden. Great trade for the Ottawa Senators in hindsight. And Straka, of course, part of the package that went to the New York Islanders there. So that's why I mentioned Straka in the earlier trade. January 23rd as well, 1996. Ottawa gets cash in return for Philadelphia getting Dan Quinn. This was the most eyebrow-raising trade I've ever seen. Because Dan Quinn at the time had 24 points in 28 games for the Ottawa Senators. He was their leading scorer. And they traded him for money. Now, this was not an ownership deal. This wasn't like Melnick selling players off or anything. Pocklington didn't come in either. This was Dan Quinn being unpopular or something went on personally that the Ottawa Senators said, all right, we got to get rid of Dan Quinn. And Philly went, we're not giving you anything for him. All right, just throw us cash. Kind of what went down there, and it was weird because this was a team that desperately needed goals, and they traded Dan Quinn for nothing. And there were plenty of pundits at the time that said, this is crazy, Ottawa needs Dan Quinn, they've got to start getting better. And Ottawa said basically, no, we decided we needed to move on. It doesn't matter, we didn't get anything back, we think we're better off. March 19th, 1996, the Ottawa Senators get a 9th-round draft pick in that draft, which becomes Sammy Salo. Not Tommy Salo, Sammy Salo, the defenseman, not the goaltender. Philadelphia gets Kerry Huffman. Who knew at the time that ninth round draft pick would become a pretty darn good player? November 27th, 1996, Ottawa gets Krister Olsen. St. Louis gets Pavel Demitra. This is why you don't give up on a guy too soon. Ottawa gave up on Demitra, and St. Louis said thank you very much, and he played pretty darn well after that. January 17th, 1998, Ottawa gets Pat Falloon, Vaclav Prospal, and a 1998 second-round draft pick. Philadelphia takes Alexander Daig off their hands. That's a win for Ottawa. That they traded away Daig, who was a flop at the NHL level. They get back Falloon, who had a better career than Daig, Prospal, and a draft pick, a second rounder. So for a guy who was a failure, getting that much back is a huge win for Ottawa. June 18th, 1999, Ottawa gets Patrick Lalime. Anaheim gets Ted Donato and Antti Jussi Niemi. Lalime went on to be a pretty darn good goaltender for the Ottawa Senators. June 23rd, 2001, Ottawa gets Bill McCult, Zdeno Chara, and a 2001 first-round draft pick, because those first-round draft picks are tricky, becomes Jason Spezza, and the New York Islanders get Alexei Yashin. So this is one of those Mike Milbury, all right, we're not worried about the future, we're worried about the now. That first-round draft pick's not going to hurt us so much because we're going to get better, and it's not going to be a big deal, and then it was. Spezza turned out to be a pretty good player, and trading for Yashin, especially since that's on draft day, you're giving up a pretty good prospect. But again, Milbury probably thinking, well, yeah, it'd be nice to have Spezza, but we're not overly worried. We'll throw in Chara. Chara's this big, lanky kid who's not really a great skater at the NHL level. He's probably not going to turn into much of anything. Physical guy, sure, but the offense isn't there. And Bill McCult's the throw-in, who had come in from Vancouver, I think it was 2 years prior to that. Or no, it wasn't. Yeah, no, it was 2 years prior to that. And probably not a big deal. Right. September 21st, 2002, Ottawa acquires Peter Schaefer from Vancouver for Sami Salo. Peter Schaefer had been a decent rookie for the Vancouver Canucks, still deemed to have some upside, and the Canucks were very smart to trade him before the NHL found out what the Canucks were suspicious was the case, which was he didn't have that much upside. And we'd seen probably the best from him we were going to get. And Sami Salo, not bad. Schaefer also had, I believe, a contract dispute with the Canucks. I don't remember if it was at that time, but I remember there was a contract dispute in and around there. February 18th, 2004, Ottawa gets Peter Bondra. I had to put this on the board because it's easy to forget Peter Bondra finished his career as a Senator, not as a Capital. In return, Washington got Brooks Laich and a 2005 second. And I remember when this trade happened saying, what in the hell? Who's Brooks Laich? I'd never heard of the guy, I had no idea. Then he had a pretty decent career, considering they got him for Peter Bondra, who was at the tail end there. Pretty good trade for Washington. August 23rd, 2005, Danny Heatley is acquired by the Ottawa Senators. Atlanta gets back Greg DeVries and Marian Hossa. In hindsight, I don't think Ottawa should have done the deal. And I say that because you look at Hossa's career overall, you look at Heatley's career overall. Heatley had all the goals and the flash and dash. But Hossa, man, it's tough to give up Hossa. At the time, the trade made sense for both teams. Danny Heatley had to get out of Atlanta after the Dan Snyder car accident. And it's easy to get mad at Heatley, but he did what a lot of young kids do, and a lot of young kids are just lucky that they avoid tragedy. And even I can even say that in I knew people who were in drinking and driving car accidents in high school, and it was terrifying. But usually people either went to the hospital for broken bones or whatever. But you wouldn't think of it as what it's become. We didn't take it as seriously back then. And the problem is I graduated in 91 and this is 2005. So Heatley probably should have known better. But there's still people that think I'm invincible. I got a great car. I'm invincible. I've only had a couple of drinks. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm good. That's why you make the plans before you drink. You make the plans because once you've been drinking, then your judgment is, anyways. So again, I throw no shade his way. And not only that, but Snyder's family didn't either. But still, he couldn't be an Atlanta Thrasher after that. June 20th, 2008, Ottawa acquires a 2008 first, which became Erik Karlsson. Nashville acquired a 2008 first, which became Chet Pickard, and a 2009 third, which became Taylor Beck. I'm going to go ahead, go out on a limb. Ottawa wins that trade. March 4th, 2009, Ottawa acquires Pascal Leclerc, a 2009 second round pick, which became Robin Lehner. Columbus gets Antoine Vermette. And at the time, I wasn't a huge fan of this trade as an Ottawa fan because I loved Vermette. I thought he was a glue guy for that team. But Lehner turns out to be a pretty good draft pick. Not necessarily for Ottawa. He ends up being traded by Ottawa. But Leclerc was the big... He was supposed to be the guy, right? So they went through Lalim. They went through the Hasek drama and all that. Emery gets a shot at it here and there. And in and amongst all that, Leclerc comes in and they kind of prop him up like, hey, here's our new starting goaltender. It's going to be Leclerc. This kid's going to be great. Ottawa tends to do this. They bring in a guy and they put him out in front of a press conference and go, hey, this guy's going to be awesome. Always be suspicious. July 8th of 2009, Ottawa acquires a 2010 sixth round pick, which became Mark Stone. Dallas gets Alex Auld. I'm going to go ahead and say I loved Auld. He played for Boston, Vancouver, Dallas, and Ottawa. That's a pretty amazing 4 teams to play for, and Florida. So you go back and watch the video where I name off my favorite teams. Auld was there. The thing is that Mark Stone kid turned out to be pretty darn good. So I'm going to go ahead and say Ottawa won that deal. September 12th, 2009, Ottawa gets Jonathan Chichu, Milan Mahalik, a 2010 second-round pick. San Jose gets Danny Heatley and a 2010 fifth-round pick. So they trade out Heatley, they bring in Chichu. Chichu's goal scoring had already started to kind of fall off at that point. There was some talk about, hey, maybe a trade will get him going, but Chichu, he had a couple of really good years at the NHL level, and it just didn't happen again. Mahalik, though, was pretty solid for them for a while, and they did trade up in the draft. So overall, it's a kind of a saw-off of sorts, but Heatley's potential earnings had dropped at that point, and his trade value had dropped as well. June 25th, 2010, the Ottawa Senators get David Rundblad from the St. Louis Blues for a first-round draft pick, which became Vlad Tarasenko. Whew. Vlad Tarasenko. Add Tarasenko to the Ottawa Senators in 2017 and tell me that they probably don't end up becoming, at the very least, Stanley Cup finalists. Did they win it in 2017 against Nashville? It was Nashville and Ottawa. I think everybody would have won that. Pittsburgh, and I know Pittsburgh fans, before they get upset, the storyline of Crosby and Pittsburgh and winning Stanley Cups is great and all. If Ottawa had won their first or Nashville had won their first, that would have been considered huge. That being said, didn't happen. February 10th, 2011, Ottawa gets a 2011 first-round pick, which becomes Nason, a 2012 third-round pick, and Nashville gets Mike Fisher. That third-round pick became Jared Maidens. Jared Maidens, who was drafted after his career was already finished. They just didn't know it at the time. They drafted him knowing it might be finished, but he might be a steal if he could play again, and it didn't happen for him. Jared Maidens has been talked about in, I want to say documentaries up here, but I think it's just features I've seen him in. Interesting story. Now, moving along. February 18th, 2011, Ottawa gets Craig Anderson. Colorado gets Brian Elliott. Colorado felt they were getting an upgrade. They found out they didn't. Elliott really struggled in Colorado, and Craig Anderson immediately found a home in Ottawa. February 24th, 2011, Ottawa gets the number 203 overall pick, which becomes Ryan Dzingel, and Pittsburgh gets Alexei Kovalev. So at the time, you're like, wow, a 7th-round pick, that's all Kovalev's worth? That's about right. And yet Ryan Dzingel becomes an NHL player, and pretty good one, too, that they would eventually kind of skewer Columbus for, and we'll get to that. December 17th, 2011, Ottawa gets Kyle Turris. Arizona gets David Rundblad and a 2012 second, which is eventually traded to Philly, which becomes Anthony Stolarz. This is how you do it. So they lose the trade where they get Rundblad badly with Tarasenko, but they get Kyle Turris for Rundblad, and so it doesn't even out, but at least it's not as bad as it was previously, right? April 3rd, 2013, Ottawa gets Corey Conacher and a 2013 fourth. Tampa Bay gets Ben Bishop. This is when Ottawa was deciding between Bishop, Anderson, Leonard. I still don't understand why they didn't keep Ben Bishop. I will never understand why Ottawa didn't keep Ben Bishop. Again, if you have Ben Bishop and you have Vlad Tarasenko on that team in 2017, holy crap. Anyways, Ottawa's been really closer to being a championship team, I think, than we really want to look at, because it gets kind of sad. July 5th, 2013, Ottawa acquires Bobby Ryan. Anaheim gets Jacob Silverberg, Stefan Nason, and a 2014 first, which became Nick Ritchie. And I remember at the time saying this deal is miserably bad for Ottawa, and there were some Ottawa fans online that argued with me that it wasn't. So, I don't think anybody can argue that now. I don't see how. July 1st, 2014, Ottawa gets Alex Chason, Alexander Guptill, Nick Paul, and a 2015 second, which was traded eventually to New Jersey, which became Mackenzie Blackwood. Dallas gets Jason Spezza and Ludwig Karlsson, so this is a win for Dallas. June 26, 2015, Ottawa gets a 2015 first, which they used to pick Colin White. Buffalo gets Robin Leonard and David Legwand. So Leonard didn't quite make it work with Buffalo, ends up leaving. So this is a trade that is a huge win for Ottawa. Colin White, likely their number one center this year. I say likely, not because he shouldn't be, but because he might end up being a number two, or he might end up holding out into the regular season. We're still in that bizarre space with the free agents right now. February 9th, 2016, Ottawa gets Dion Phaneuf, Matt Fratton, Casey Bailey, Ryan Rupert, and Cody Donaghy. Toronto gets Jared Cowan, Colin Greening, Milan Mahalik, Tobias Lindbergh, and a 2017 second. And I remember when this trade happened. The reaction was one of, where the hell is Toronto going to put all these players? And then the answer was they didn't really plan on keeping any of them, really. I think they'd hoped that Cowan could turn it around, and he didn't. They just needed to get rid of that Dion Phaneuf contract. That's what this was all about, was taking that Dion Phaneuf contract and getting rid of it. They didn't want it. And it was weird to me when Ottawa picked him up, but Phaneuf I thought was decent in Ottawa. Pretty good player. June 24th, just not worth the money he was getting paid, but I thought he played well. June 24th, 2016, Ottawa acquires a 2016 first they used on Logan Brown. New Jersey gets a 2016 first, which became Michael McLeod, and a third-round pick as well. So, we'll see if Logan Brown makes the jump this year and proves Ottawa right for having that kind of faith in him that they make that trade. July 18th, 2016, Ottawa gets a 2018 seventh and Derek Brassard. New York Rangers get a 2018 second and Mika Zibanejad. I talked about this in the Rangers video yesterday. I'm bewildered and befuddled by this deal to this day. It'll never make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me at the time either. November 5th, 2017, Ottawa gets Matt Duchene. This trade I had to look up, and I had to look up reactions to it at the time. Not now, at the time. So Ottawa gets Matt Duchene. Colorado gets a lot. So we'll say Nashville gets Kyle Turris, and then we'll get to what Colorado gets. Shane Bowers, Andrew Hammond, a 2019 first, which is Bowen Byram, Samuel Girard, Vladislav Hamanev, and a 2018 second from Nashville. So those other draft picks came from Ottawa. This trade at the time, Ottawa fans said the following. We got the best player in the trade, we win the trade. Bowers hasn't proven anything. The highest upside he has is maybe third line center. He's not very good. Hammond, well, we're paying him not to play anyway, so we don't really care that we're losing Hammond. That first round draft pick, that's going to be a mid to late first round draft pick anyways. So it really doesn't matter. It's not going to be a top 10 draft pick. And of course it was 2018 or 2019. So like, well, since it's lottery protected, we don't have to worry about it being a good draft pick. And that was the general feeling of Ottawa fans. There were some who said Colorado wins this trade going away. But when somebody said Colorado absolutely wins this trade, the answer was usually, well, you don't know that. You have no idea. You don't know that. You guys can't see the future. Colorado got guys who, they're not playing yet, so it doesn't really matter. And there were comments about how Ottawa had lots of depth coming up with centers anyways, so they didn't really need any other prospects. Logan Brown was mentioned, Chlapik was mentioned, and Francis Perron as well was mentioned, as these guys are going to be good, so we don't really need them. And this was the thinking. This was the short-term thinking, that this first-round draft pick, who cares? Ottawa's a really good team. We don't need a first-round draft pick. And this is why when people, when I see a first-round draft pick getting moved, and I see people going, well, it doesn't really matter because that's a good team. Well, yeah, but if it's a future first-rounder, are you sure they're going to be a top team next year? Are you 100% sure? Because Ottawa was pretty sure at the time they made that deal they were going to be a top team. And then they absolutely miserably weren't. Okay, moving along to the next trade that involved way too many players. On February 23rd, 2018, Ottawa gets a 2018 first, Philip Gustafson, Ian Cole, and a 2019 third. Ian Cole would not be a Senator for more than 6 hours. Pittsburgh gets a 2018 third, Vincent Dunn and Derek Brassard. And in that trade, Vegas retains 40% salary on Derek Brassard because I still don't. That's one that I don't understand either. Maybe when we get to the Vegas video, I'll see where that deal gets to make sense. The Vegas retained salary on a guy that they never had. That was a trade, too, that they tried to do twice. The first time around, the NHL went, this is bat crap crazy. You can't do this. And then the second time, I guess the NHL went, fine. We'll let Vegas retain salary on a player they never had. September 13th, 2018, Ottawa acquires Josh Norris, Chris Tierney, Rudolph Balcers, Dylan DeMello, 2019 second-round pick, 2020 first, 2021 second-round pick, and a 2022 first-round pick. San Jose gets Erik Karlsson and Francis Perron. So this is the September 13th, 2018 deal with Erik Karlsson. Prior to that, they made another trade with San Jose. June 19th, 2018, they get Mikkel Bodker and Julius Bergman, 2020 6th-round pick. San Jose gets Mike Hoffman, Cody Donaghy into 2025. So, Hoffman and Karlsson are both traded to San Jose. Hoffman gets moved then to Florida before we can do the jersey retirement ceremony for him in San Jose. So, Ottawa gets Mikkel Bodker, Julius Bergman, a 2020 6th, Josh Norris, Chris Tierney, Rudolph Balcers, Dylan DeMello, a 2019 second, a 2020 first, 2021 second, and a 2022 first-round draft pick. This is the ultimate example of we're going to get maximum assets back in the hopes that some of these assets become really good players. And some of them absolutely could. The risk is still there. For San Jose, they made out pretty well. When I get to the San Jose part of this playlist, we can look at what they got back from Florida, which people argued at the time they kind of got more from Florida than Ottawa got from San Jose. And we can look at that and debate whether or not that's true. But for Erik Karlsson, it was quite the haul. The problem was none of these players looked like they had the upside to become a superstar. So it's dependent on those draft picks to have at least one become a star player. And that's where Ottawa has its fingers crossed. But at that point, Karlsson wasn't staying in Ottawa. Not because he didn't want to, but because management didn't want him to stick around. He said after the trade he hadn't talked to management in months. So, many, many months. So, that's indicative right there that they didn't want to keep him around. February 22nd, 2019, Ottawa acquires Vitaly Abramov, Jonathan Davidson in the 2019 first. Columbus gets Matt Duchene and Julius Bergman. So, Bergman has been traded with Matt Duchene, and he was part of the trade. He was traded for Hoffman. So Bergman must be a pretty important player. It's weird. And maybe at some point I'll do a career of Julius Bergman video because he hasn't played a game in the NHL, but he's been traded with or for very big names in the NHL. So anyways, he was with Columbus at this point. I think he's been moved again since then. I'm pretty sure he's been moved again since then. February 23rd, 2019, Ottawa acquires Anthony Duclair and second-round pick in both the 2020 and 2021 draft for Ryan Dzingel. This is a huge win for Ottawa. Dzingel has moved on. He does not re-sign with Columbus. Dzingel was not very good during his time in Columbus either. They sold high on Dzingel, and they were very smart not to give in to Dzingel's demands and give him big money over a long term. I think Stone and Duchene, you could justify giving them money and giving them term, but Dzingel, no. If he wanted some serious, money based on the 20 goal season he was having that looked like it might have hit 30 at some points during the year, I would have said no to that as well. His career average states that his numbers are going to come down next year. February 25th, 2019, Ottawa acquires Eric Brandstrom, Oscar Lindbergh, and a 2020 second for Mark Stone going to Vegas. Brandstrom's the linchpin in all this. So in the midst of all this rebuild that's going on, Brandstrom and how he performs as soon as this year is going to tell you about how long and painful this rebuild could be. If Brandstrom's as good as advertised at the National Hockey League level, and so far since his draft, he has led no one to believe he won't be pretty darn good. If he is as good as advertised, this team could get better quickly, more quickly than most of us give him credit for. I think they're a young goaltender away from being a pretty good young team. Chabot is the real deal. If Brandstrom's the real deal as well, if those two give them a 1-2 punch on the blue line that's hard for other teams to match up with, they're going to be a long ways towards becoming a respectable team in the NHL. It's tough because you're giving up all of your name players. You're giving up all your core. This was a team that was in the conference finals in 2017 and agonizingly close to knocking out Pittsburgh. But in the end, they failed to do so, and since then, it's been a mess. They have to overlook that they traded away the number 4 pick in 2019, which became Bowen Byram. Because here's the thing, if you have Brandstrom, Byram, and Chabot on that blue line, holy crap, you've got a great young blue line there. So you have to kind of overlook that. Last trade on the board is another one of these let's throw as many bodies in as possible kind of trades. July 1st, 2019, they make the trade with Toronto, of course. They add Nikita Zaitsev, Connor Brown, Michael Carcone. Going to Toronto are Cody Ceci, Ben Harper, Aaron Luchuk, and a 2020 third. And, of course, the big name in this one is Zaitsev for Ottawa. Big name going the other way is Ceci, but Connor Brown could be a steal for the Ottawa Senators as they try to add more veterans to kind of be placeholders until all of the kids are ready. And that's the big question with Ottawa. When will all the kids be ready? So there you go. The history of the Ottawa Senators. And once you get into the trade part of the board, there's a lot to talk about. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.